Do you often find yourself taking things personally, getting overly offended or hurt by remarks or situations that often have less or nothing to do with you? If so, you're definitely not alone. In a world of miscommunications and misunderstandings, it's incredibly easy to have our feelings bruised frequently. But what if I told you there's a better way? That by following 10 scientifically proven tips, you can learn how not to take things so personally. You can free yourself from unnecessary pain and live with more peace of mind. If you watch this whole video, you'll walk away with 10 powerful strategies to stop taking things personally from the world's top psychologists and neuroscientists. Let's dive in. 1. Understand it's not about you. When someone criticizes you, acts rudely, or does something hurtful, the first step is to realize that it's not actually about you as a person. It's about the other person's own stuff, their insecurities, stresses, beliefs, and emotional baggage. As the famous author Don Miguel Ruiz writes, nothing other people do is because of you. It is because of themselves. Their behaviors, attitudes, and reactions are projections of their own reality and experiences, not a reflection of your worth. From a neuroscience perspective, when we take things personally, the me centers of our brain's default mode network light up. We become hyper-focused on ourselves, and the mind distorts the situation to be about our egos. The reality is that other people's actions towards you reveal more about them than you. Once you deeply internalize this, it becomes much easier not to take things so personally. 2. Pause and breathe. In the heat of the moment, when someone has said or done something that triggers you, your body goes into fight or flight mode. Your heart rate rises, blood pressure spikes, and the amygdala, fear center of your brain, takes over rational thinking. This physiological stress response makes it nearly impossible to respond objectively. Minor comments or events get blown out of proportion because you're in an emotional defensive state. The secret is to resist lashing out impulsively. Instead, pause and take a few deep breaths to short-circuit the stress response. This activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which induces feelings of calmness. Breathe work like box breathing, where you inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4, exhale for 4, and hold for 4 again, rapidly slows your heart rate and attentional functioning returns to the prefrontal cortex. From this centered state, you'll be able to respond thoughtfully rather than react automatically from ego. 3. Question your assumptions. When we take things personally, it's usually because we're making negative assumptions about the other person's intentions. We assume they meant to hurt, disrespect, or offend us in some way. But more often than not, those assumptions are completely off base. We put our own insecure spin on the situation without knowing the full context. To avoid this, get in the habit of questioning your assumptions before they solidify into facts in your mind. Ask yourself, is there another way I could be interpreting this situation? What are the facts, and what am I imagining mind reading? Could this have been unintentional or not about me at all? You'd be amazed how many personal offenses evaporate when you remove faulty assumptions. Most of the time, people's actions have absolutely nothing to do with you. It's on you to fill in those blanks objectively. 4. Develop emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence, EQ, is the ability to recognize, understand, and manage emotions in yourself and others. It's an underrated life skill that helps you navigate interpersonal dynamics more smoothly. Here's why EQ is so powerful for not taking things personally. With high EQ, you can recognize when your own emotional triggers, limiting beliefs, and psychological blind spots are getting activated. You become aware of how your perception can be skewed by internal factors. You also develop empathy to understand where others are coming from. Their tone, body language, and actions take on new meaning when viewed through their lenses and experiences. Overall, strong EQ makes you unpluckable. Comments and actions that might normally set you off get filtered through an objective, understanding mindset. You don't take the bait because you have insight into the human experience. If you struggle with EQ, working on self-awareness through practices like journaling, therapy, or emotional literacy courses can be game-changing. 5. Detach from ego. At the core of taking things personally is the ego, that aspect of our minds that constantly craves validation and approval while rejecting anything that contradicts its desired self-image. From the ego's perspective, personal attacks poke holes in its inflated self-worth, so it perceives them as genuine threats to be neutralized defensively. The remedy? Learning to detach your sense of self-worth from any external outcome or perception. Realizing your human value isn't conditional on other people's praise or criticism. Socrates demonstrated the art of ego detachment perfectly perfectly. Students would openly mock and ridicule him, but he remained unbothered. He simply didn't take things personally, knowing their remarks said nothing about his core essence and character. With practice, you can weaken your ego's control and live more from your essential self, the wise observer within that doesn't get ruffled by the egoic winds blowing around. 6. Practice compassion and empathy. Hatred and hostility usually stem from people's own insecurities, fears, and psychological wounds. Rarely does someone lash out at others without deeper underlying issues. When you can see that hurt people tend to hurt people, it becomes easier to cultivate compassion for unkind actions. You can empathize with their suffering even if their outward behaviors are unacceptable. This doesn't excuse bad behavior, but it shifts your perspective. For example, if a family member constantly criticizes you, it likely comes from their inner feelings of inadequacy and fear of being judged themselves. By having compassion for their frailties, their hurtful comments become less about you. When you meet negativity with compassion instead of taking it personally, you avoid perpetuating more negativity and hurt. It's the only way to break cycles of conflict. 7. Get to the root of it. While many situations that trigger us aren't actually personal, some stem from deeper, unresolved core issues that need addressing within ourselves. Maybe you have an overbearing parent who repeatedly dismisses or minimizes your accomplishments. It's understandable to feel hurt, but if you keep taking their comments to heart each time, it points to a void in self-love. Or perhaps you experience disproportionate hurt anytime your partner is unreliable. There could be an underlying abandonment trauma that needs healing. Getting to the root through self-reflection reveals the blind spots that make you overly sensitive or defensive. It highlights the inner work you need to overcome taking everything so personally. A good way to get started is journaling about the triggers that set you off most intensely. Notice any themes or patterns emerging, then take steps to work through those core issues, whether through inner child work, therapy, or other healing modalities. 8. Be humble and see the full picture. We'd all like to see ourselves as completely rational beings, but the truth is that we all have blind spots, biases, and subjective perceptions that cloud our judgment at times. Maintaining an attitude of humility and staying open to other perspectives is key for not taking things personally. It allows you to see the full context instead of jumping to ego-defensive conclusions. Here are some humble questions to ask yourself. Is it possible I'm not seeing the full picture here? Could we both be misunderstanding each other's intent? What role did I potentially play in this situation unfolding? Pointing the finger solely at others is usually the ego looking for a target to blame. Having a humble, level-headed outlook helps you stay grounded in understanding. 9. Set clear boundaries. While it's important not to take things too personally, you also don't want to be a doormat who tolerates abusive or mistreating behavior. There's a balance to strike. Setting healthy boundaries in your relationships and life helps prevent you from internalizing negativity that you shouldn't have to endure. Boundaries communicate your standards for how you expect to be treated. For example, you could set a boundary that you won't tolerate being shouted at by loved ones. If they can't communicate without yelling, you'll disengage. Modeling this consistently shows you don't take disrespectful actions personally, you address them for resolution. Boundaries not only protect your self-worth, but they discourage people from overstepping in the first place. When you consistently reinforce your personal guidelines, others adapt their behavior accordingly. Of course, setting boundaries requires first knowing your limits and having the confidence to enforce them, which leads to the final tip. 10. Build unshakable self-worth. At the deepest level, not taking things personally comes down to having a rock-solid sense of self-worth that doesn't get shaken by external opinions or experiences. When your happiness and identity stem from an unshakable source within, other people's perceptions can't easily rent space in your mind. You just don't have that much vested in their viewpoints because you already know your value. But cultivating this level of self-love and assurance doesn't happen overnight. It's an ongoing practice of self-discovery and reprogramming negative core beliefs. Some proven methods: affirmations, reprogram self-talk like "I am enough", self-compassion, treat yourself with kindness versus harsh self-critique, realize your humanity, no one is perfect and struggles are part of the journey, focus on growth, value the process over outward success failure, choose your influences, limit negative voices and increase positive ones. As the saying goes, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. With strong self-worth, you won't feel the need to react defensively or accept mistreatment as truth about you. Cultivating grounded confidence in your inherent worth allows you to not take things as personally and respond from a higher perspective. If you have made it this far, let us know what you think in the comment section below. For more interesting topics, make sure you watch the recommended video that you see on the screen right now. Thanks for watching.